There is a proverb among the Akan people, so old no one knows who first said it, only that it has been true as long as there have been people to test it. Life is a road. What the proverb does not say, what people only discover by living it, is that some roads are not chosen. Some roads choose. When last we left Kofi Asante-Boateng, he had just walked out of his compound in Kumasi before sunrise, leaving behind a wife who had told him the truth, a great uncle who had told him the truth, a herbalist who had told him the truth, and carrying with him, strapped to his wrist, an amulet he hoped was stronger than all three of them combined. He was wrong, but he would not find that out today. Today he was still running, and running for a man like Kofi felt very much like winning. He traveled on foot for the first 2 days on the Eastern Traders Road, a wide track worn smooth by generations of feet, carts, and the hooves of pack animals. The forest pressed in on either side, great silk cotton trees whose roots rose from the earth like the knees of resting giants, ferns waist-high in the green shadow, hornbills exploding overhead in bursts of orange and black. On the third day, he hired passage with a group of cola traders moving east by cart. They were cheerful company, 4 men and a woman, all from the Kwahu area, sharing provisions and stories in the evenings. They asked no questions about why a well-dressed man from Kumasi was traveling alone with no merchandise and the eyes of someone checking his back trail. On the 5th day, one of the traders, a broad-shouldered man named Aser, who laughed at everything including things that were not funny, noticed the leather amulet on Kofi's wrist. Kofi said yes, just a protection for travel. Aser nodded slowly, then said the thing he was clearly deciding whether to say. I went to her once, after my first wife died. I asked if she could have prevented it. She said, protection is not prevention. Protection means you face it with your chest open and your ancestors beside you. Prevention means it never comes. She does not do prevention. Nobody does, friend, nobody does. Kofi changed the subject. He did not sleep well that night. On the 8th day, he reached the Volta. It was wider than he expected, a great brown river moving with the quiet authority of something that has been moving longer than memory. On the near bank, a cluster of travelers waited for the ferry. Kofi joined them, shifting his leather bag from shoulder to shoulder, watching the far bank with the relief of a man who believes that crossing water puts distance between himself and whatever is following him. While he waited, a child approached him. A girl, perhaps 8 years old, dressed in faded wax-print cloth, her hair in small tight puffs. She was alone, which was strange. She carried a clay pot on her head, which was not. She walked up to Kofi with the direct confidence of someone who has not yet learned that approaching strangers requires explanation. She looked at his amulet, then she looked at his face. She said, "My grandmother says a man who crosses this river to escape what is behind him will find it has already crossed." Kofi froze. He looked around for the child's grandmother, for any adult who might have sent her. The other travelers were occupied with their own business. No one was watching the girl. No one claimed her. He looked back. She was already walking away, her clay pot balanced on her head with the natural ease of the very young, disappearing into the cluster of market women on the bank, as if she had been absorbed back into the crowd like morning mist into morning air. He crossed the river. The cold brown water moved around his ankles. He did not look back at the far bank. But his hands, gripping the ferry rail, were not entirely steady. He stayed for 12 days in the highland town of Ho, in the Volta region, a place of red hills and green valleys, where the Yu people built their compound houses differently from what he knew. Lower roofs, narrower doorways, walls reinforced sometimes with laterite stone. The women's cloth knotted over one shoulder in patterns of deep red and brown that reminded Kofi of the earth itself remembering. He found a guest house run by a fat, kind man called Dela who fed his guests lavishly and asked no questions. His room had a window that opened east, toward the hills. For the first 4 days, Kofi felt something extraordinary. He felt safe. The Harmattan had not yet reached Ho. The air was still moist and green. The sky was still blue. None of these people knew him. He was nobody's story here. He ate well. He slept heavily. He watched the sun go down behind the hills and felt the coil of fear in his chest begin at last to loosen. On the 5th day, he met a craftsman in the market, a small, precise man named Keta who repaired brass instruments for his living. They fell into conversation in the way travelers and craftsmen sometimes do. In the long afternoon when the market slows and heat makes philosophy seem less impractical than usual. Kofi did not tell him the full truth, but he outlined it. A man who had received a warning, he said, and was traveling to put distance between himself and it. Keta turned a small brass bell over and over in his hands while he thought, then said, "There is a belief among my people certain things have what we call design, a center, a place where they must happen, not because the place is special, but because the event chooses its place the way water chooses its level. You can redirect the water, for a while, but it always finds where it was always going to rest." Kofi changed the subject. But that night, lying on his sleeping mat, listening to the wind begin to shift direction, he felt it. The first edge of Harmattan, thin as a rumor, faint as a promise broken, a dryness at the back of the throat, a whitening at the rim of the night sky. The dry wind was coming. He was out of Ho before sunrise. What followed were 10 days Kofi himself would later call the madness. He moved east and then south and then east again. He slept in guest houses and once in a farmer's barn and once under a tree, wrapped in his kente cloth. He ate when there was food. He poured libation every morning without fail, but the ritual was becoming less an act of communion and more an act of desperation. He was not calling his ancestors. He was bargaining with them. And the Harmattan followed him. That was what made it feel personal, feel like pursuit. Wherever he went, within a day or two, the sky would whiten and the air would thin and the dust would arrive from the north, fine and pink red, covering everything. He began to hate the color of the sky. He began to hate the wind. It was in this state, tired, cracked-lipped, moving on momentum, that he met the trader on the road south of the Keta lagoon. The trader was heading north, loaded with dried fish and sea salt. Small man. Wide hat. The brisk manner of someone who wastes time on nothing, including conversation. But when Kofi asked if he knew anywhere the Harmattan barely reached, somewhere the sea was close, the air stayed wet, the trader stopped. He pointed south. Keta, he said, right down at the edge of the world, the lagoon on one side, the great ocean on the other. Harmattan comes there late, if at all. It's the edge of everything. If you want to be nowhere in particular, that's your place. Kofi thanked him and walked south. He had never heard of Keta before that moment. He had no connection to it, no business there, no reason on earth to go there. Except the one reason he did not understand yet, that every choice he had made since the festival, every direction taken, every road followed, every piece of advice accepted or rejected had been, step by careful step, building the exact road required to deliver him exactly there. On the last stretch, as he walked toward a sound he had never heard before in his life, that vast, breathing, oceanic sound, the Harmattan winds were behind him. He felt something settle in his chest, not peace, not safety, something older and stranger than either. He felt as if he were arriving somewhere. He did not know yet that this was true in a way he had not meant and would not have chosen. Kofi has arrived at Keta, a town he has never heard of, at the edge of the world between a lagoon and the great ocean. He believes he has escaped. He believes he has finally run far enough. He has never been more wrong in his life. In episode 3, the final chapter of this story, something will happen on that beach that will change everything you thought you understood about what Akamfo Antwi said in that courtyard. There is a woman in white waiting at the water's edge, and she has been waiting there for a very long time. If this story is doing something to you, if you found yourself holding your breath in this episode, then like this video. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think is about to happen. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, do it now and ring the bell so that when episode 3 drops, you are the very first to know. More stories live here. More are coming. We make them for you. Help us reach the ears that need to hear them.